Welcome to A Shot Between the Reels. It's two guys having a frank discussion about movies. My name is Dan, and over here,
Brendan,
Brendan. How are you doing tonight, Brendan?
I'm good. I'm very warm because it is currently absolutely baking in the UK, but
It
otherwise
is a heat wave, isn't it? Heat wave.
it is.
They reckon that it's going to be thunderstorms in a few days' time.
Love a good thunderstorm.
So do I. They promised one recently, though. It was a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't hit my town. I was very disappointed. I
I
love
think,
a
I think
thunderstorm.
I saw that. I think I saw that thunderstorm. So I was
Well, lucky you. So, let's see what thunder and lightning happens tonight. Who knows? See if any sparks fly. Okay, so I'm going to just put this question to you, Brendan,
Go ahead.
before we get into our review today. So, what film was the last film that you had to turn off, or just gave up on?
Oh,
Have you got a
man.
film? The last one. I'll give you mine while you think. Okay.
Okay, yeah, go on.
So the last one that I can remember doing that to was quite recent. I think it was this year. So it was early 2020, before lockdown, and it was the film called Replicas on Netflix with Keanu Reeves, and he plays this kind of scientist who can apparently make these AI, and it was just so bad for the first 10 minutes. It was just like pulling teeth to watch. It was just like, even Keanu was trying his best, but he couldn't do it. And I felt for him, and was like, I'm not putting myself through this ever again. Okay, everybody, this is my wife. What was the last film that you turned off? But you started it and thought, no, I'm not having this. Have you got any films that you want to add in? I've asked Brendan this question.
Not many, to be honest, because I only ever really watch films I know I'm going to enjoy, I think.
Okay.
Bold statement.
Bold statement. Bold statement. I remember taking that to the cinema to see a dreadful film called, it was a horror film, it was just a mistake. But do you remember
Captivity?
Captivity.
How can I forget?
Yeah, we left after about
It made an
15
impression.
minutes.
I haven't slept well since.
It was so bad. It was just like, why are we watching this?
We were like the only people in there as well. It was even creepier.
Yeah,
So
it
bad
wasn't
it
great.
affected your sleep for life. That is impressive.
Yeah, I don't think we were married then. Actually, it was a long time ago. So, but she stayed with me. So forgiveness. Anyway, clear off.
Yeah. See you later.
Love you. Okay.
So,
Brendan, so I had Replicas, which was it was awful. The dialogue, CGI. I mean, I'm quite interested in the whole AI kind of storyline, and I'm fascinated by that in cinema. But this one just looked full of cliches, and I just didn't have time for it. So there you go. Brendan.
I mean, I was going to say personally, a lot of the time, I would be similar in a sense that I tend to, if I'm making a choice about watching a film, I do my research beforehand. I think my time is precious to me. If I'm going to sit down and watch this, I want to know that I'm at least going to get something out of it. I didn't think ahead with Artemis Fowl, and that was a mistake.
Oh yes, that's true. But you ploughed on with that, didn't you?
I did. I didn't turn it off, and I did watch it to the end in the hopes.
Do you know what? There's no medals for that, though, Brendan. You don't win an award.
I don't.
No.
And I'm regretful about it, but I will tell a story that years ago I used to work for the cinema, and I got a chance to see a lot of films. Most of the time I was not paying to see these films. So maybe this doesn't count in the same way, but there are at least more films where I felt the ability to walk out of them. One that I did walk out of
was
Ted 2, which I personally found
What?
really bad. I did not enjoy
What
it
was the
at all.
film?
Ted 2.
Head 2. How
No,
do I
Ted,
not?
Ted. You know, so it's
Oh, Ted 2. Do you know what? I'd forgotten they made a sequel.
they made a sequel, and the sequel was not good. In fact, those films generally brought in the worst types of people to the cinema, just in my opinion.
I
But
didn't enjoy the first one, I've got to be honest.
and the second one was so bad that I just couldn't sit in the cinema anymore. So it was relatively quiet on the day that I went. I made sure of that, but I went in and didn't enjoy it. And but I had a few experiences in the cinema really where there were films that either I wished I'd walked out of, but didn't quite have the guts maybe to do it. I'm always in the idea that I'm in the vein of thought, maybe it will get better. It could have a redeeming feature.
Sometimes that happens. It does happen sometimes.
I sat the whole way through Kingdom of Crystal Skull waiting for it to get better. It just didn't.
Yeah, to be honest, that film, it has a really bad ending.
Significantly.
If anything, the ending is probably the worst bit.
Exactly. It only gets worse.
I don't hate that film, personally. I don't hate it. It's just not as great as the others.
When compared against the others, it is the ultimate bomb, isn't it? Really, it's the black mark against the rest of it.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so shall we move on to our film?
Let's do it.
So last week when we looked at a film, we kind of talked about whether we would recommend it, and we gave our star rating. So shall we do the same this week, I think? Yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do star ratings.
Okay.
Brendan, you first. What did you give? Oh, no, tell us what the film is first. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes, it would probably help, wouldn't it?
I gave a film some stars.
The film we're reviewing this evening is Da 5 Bloods by Spike Lee. And it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Excellent. And what, pray tell, did you give this film?
So I gave this film 4.5 stars.
Wow. So that's a very positive rating.
It is.
I gave Da 5 Bloods 4.5 stars as well.
Whoa!
Snap. There you go.
Brilliant.
So, I think, we don't really need to say much because obviously our ratings have given a high recommendation in and of themselves. But if anyone's thinking about, should I give this film a go, what would you say to them?
I'd say, not mentioning any spoilers here, we'll keep it light on that. I would say that this is definitely worth your time if you're interested in the ideas of what the film is putting across. You could watch the trailer or whatever the thing, whatever they call it, that shows the clip reel that shows ahead of it on Netflix. If it looks interesting, if you like the back catalogue of what Spike Lee has already produced, I think it's going to hit on all of those notes, and especially in the current climate, I suppose, that is really happening at the moment, leading into all of the Black Lives Matter stuff and how important that is. I think this film couldn't have been more aptly timed, and it's so important. It's one of those films where I would say it deserves a watch. It has that, it comes with that tag for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, if anyone's kind of put off by the 2.5 hour kind of time, I would just say don't worry about that. It zips along and it is great all the way through. Really interesting and definitely worth your time. Definitely worth trying out, especially if you like the kind of Vietnam stuff, any of those war kind of movies. It's definitely worth going for. And like you say, we are at a time where, with Black Lives Matter and that movement kind of being so front and centre, we need to be educating ourselves.
Absolutely.
I definitely found this film helpful in that sense. So go watch it. Pause now. Hit pause before we review it in depth. Go watch it, come back, and then listen to our chat, frank discussion. Cool. So let's get into it. Spoiler time. Brendan, where do you want to start?
So, as you were saying, this film is long. I think for me, if I start off with maybe the only really negative that I could pull against it, I think is that the runtime. I don't know if I even necessarily looked at the runtime at the beginning. I just noticed as I had to pause it for something how long it was and thought, man, I don't know if I'm going to make this in one session. But then, like you said, I think it became not an issue for me at all because the story was so compelling and I was so built in by the narrative that was going on and the characters and seeing everything develop that for me it's so watchable. It keeps dragging you kind of back in, and if it has a moment, it does have several moments where it takes a breather, but it always has a reason to take that breather, to tell you more about a character or to clue you in on a bit of past, to give more weight to what is then going to come later in the film. So it's very much a film of those two parts, I think, really, the build-up and then the payoff, right? It's all of that. And it is very much a Spike Lee film. If you know his back catalogue, you know other films of recently he's done, like if you've watched BlacKkKlansman, it definitely rings true to kind of that as well. It's maybe less of a comedy focus than that film was, but it's still got so much going for it. I mean, it kept me compelled the whole way through. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think the only downside that I think, the kind of thing that sort of maybe stops it from being 5 stars, because I was really close to giving it 5 stars. I think it probably has too many threads and storylines at times and kind of genre shifts, if you will. There's too many kind of maneuvers and threads going on. It kind of just muddles it a little, and it kind of makes it kind of stretch probably too far, which is a shame. But having said that, I personally love a film that is daring and wants to, when a filmmaker, you can see they're going, right, I'm not holding anything back. I'm going to make this film as if it's the last film I make. I'm going to put everything into it, my heart and soul, and I want to put every storyline I can squeeze into this without, making the story fall apart. I want to keep it, make it as good as possible. And I have a real sense that Spike Lee was doing that. So it can kind of, for me, like, you can almost do it too much, and that's probably where it kind of drops down for me. Having said that, I love this film. I know I would watch it again happily.
I mean, I think what's great about it is he's obviously using the media of film as his voice to say what he really feels about what's currently happening in the world, what the oppression that Black people have felt for years and years and is still ongoing for some sort of mad reason still happens today. And I guess it shows there's so much weight behind everything that's happening because of that. It helps in a sense, I guess, that it's so current events, but also it can be applied throughout history. And I love those little things where they put callbacks to famous activists throughout time.
Yeah, really good.
They kind of bleed in old footage that's coming in.
Yeah.
So as much as you're living the story of these men going back that never really escaped Vietnam, it's still very much in their hearts, right? But then you also have the main person, so Chadwick Boseman, the guy that has died out in Vietnam, that they're going back to, they're trying to find his remains as well. That's part of what they're doing, and them going out there. When you see his moments are always so powerful. I mean, he is a scene stealer. Like, every time he's on screen, it's great. It's really good, and I think the whole cast here do such a good job. It's great casting throughout. I know. I think I read online that the casting could have potentially been very different.
I saw that as well. It sounded absolutely mental.
I mean, like, what, Samuel Jackson at one point was attached, and there was
Denzel.
Yeah, Denzel and Giancarlo Esposito, which would have been insane. But I think this cast works really well, and you will see why. Like, watching the film, you get such a raw emotional moments from every single character. There's not one of them where you think, oh, they're not delivering, or they're a bit of dead weight in the sense of what they're giving out. I think all of it is on point. You really do feel like a connection with everyone, which I think is so important.
Yeah, and I love films that can do that kind of, you just get connected to these characters so quickly. And the cast is brilliant. I love, personally, one of my favourite. I've got two of my favourites are in there. So Clark Peters and Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
Yeah,
who I love from The Wire. Have you seen The Wire?
Yeah.
So for me, it was great seeing those guys, and obviously Isaiah Whitlock Jr. dropping the old she. I think I cheered when I heard that, actually.
I think I particularly like that you heard him do it at least a couple of times. Like, that's brilliant.
He does it in everything as well. Like every film, it's like almost like in his contract. I think that if he's in the film, he has to drop it.
It's nice. It's nice.
It is. It's great. It's great. So yeah, the cast is amazing. Like you say, Chadwick Boseman is just brilliant. But yeah, Delroy Lindo kind of is just.
I mean, he is a tour de force basically in this film. I mean, it's unbelievable when he's on screen. And the strange thing is, he's probably not really a likable character. I don't think he's not painted that way. You're not meant to really like him, but there are times when the amazing way that it's done, it just makes you see it from his point of view.
Yeah.
You see why he's struggling.
You feel that pain, don't you?
He hasn't had that great upbringing, and I think also he just feels like life's done him wrong, and he lost basically his best friend in the war, and he never kind of gets over it. And personally, I think I was trying to understand it at the time, but they have those shifts when they look back at the war, and I was looking at it being like, they're definitely the same age there that we are currently seeing them, right? And I was trying to work out why stylistically they went for that. And then it becomes more apparent as you're going through the film. Like I said, they basically never left Vietnam in their hearts.
Yeah.
They're reliving those events as their current age. And I think it's stylistically
so powerful.
An amazing choice. It's so cool because you just don't see that in other films. They show you a flashback of flashbacks of flashback.
Yeah.
You get Chadwick as a young man because he died as a young man, and they are old men interacting at that point. And there's moments where they interact with the character. It just feels, it takes you on that journey that they are actually currently living so much more. There's a greater emphasis on that. And especially when you get those moments at the end where they are thrust into a warlike environment, and they very much feel like they're hopping back into action immediately off the back of the war, which is
100%. Yeah, because they're basically just like, this isn't my first time. I know what I'm doing. And they just slot right back in. And like you say, those sequences where it's like they're kind of like a flashback. They're more like memories, aren't they? Where they put themselves in there, and it just emphasizes how Norm, how his character dies, and he stays that age, doesn't he? He's forever that age. Whereas they've obviously grown older, and that just hits home so much more. I like you say, I loved how he did that. Just really refreshing and powerful. And I loved how it changes the aspect ratio changes on the screen, and it looks like it's been filmed in the
great. I mean,
70s.
that's
or
great.
whatever. It's just
Those
like,
moments where
wow.
they're shooting on the millimeter camera, aren't they? And you see it look like was almost like going back to that
Yeah.
older footage as well.
It
All of
looks
it,
amazing.
it's great. It's great callbacks. It just feels the fact that they're shifting between different film styles and they're playing, like you say, with the aspect ratio. I think one point they have it almost like theater letterbox mode, and then it stretches.
It expands out, doesn't it? It does it a couple of times, doesn't it? It's almost like signaling like a new chapter, isn't it? Those moments where it just goes like that.
It's unbelievable. I think the connection there is so good because suddenly, as the view widens to kind of have the scope of the whole of Vietnam as they're kind of going in and they're searching out for this gold, it becomes a very it does become a very different movie. I mean, I would say echo what you said earlier, that saying maybe a negative point to it almost is that there's a lot of different tendrils, and you definitely feel that towards the end because you've got a lot of different stories that you're hoping are going to wrap before the end of the film, and it does do it, and it has a lot of signature Spike Lee moments. I mean, particularly the camera work at the end of the film where you have them. I can't. I'm trying to recall what that tracking shot would actually be, but when they're almost look like they're floating towards the camera, smiling, it echoes a little bit what that shot is at the end of Black Klansman as well, where they look like they're floating towards the front of the cameras.
Yeah,
that stuff is great. Like I say, I think there's hardly any negative notes I can put against this film. For me, it keeps pulling the surprises out of the bag, and that's what you really want from a film. All your dialogue moments are great. I mean, for you, what was a particular, let's say, a standout moment and a surprise moment?
Oh, so actually, I think this film is rich with these great moments.
Yeah.
So there's the sequence where you have, I think is it Eddie? I want to say Eddie. He steps on a mine and goes, basically.
I was going to say that was one of mine.
But then quickly after, you have the old French people who come along, and then Paul's son steps on a mine. He doesn't take his foot off, and he's standing on it. So all within this sequence, they realise they're kind of being followed, and then he's on this. All of a sudden, he's on a mine, and then they realise there's a way of getting him off. They did it once before, back in the day in Vietnam, where they pulled this guy off.
Yeah.
And that scene, the tension is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I just was like, heart in my mouth.
Yeah.
What is going on? Literally, the way he builds that sequence up, with the guy dying, then those people arrive, all within like 2 minutes, maybe.
Because it paints it perfectly, doesn't it? You have the tension is immediately built because they lose their friend, and they almost have no time to grieve him because pretty much immediately then he steps on the landmine, and then you think, well, how are they going to get him out of that? You know there's panic. You know when the guys show up that defuse the thing, don't know what to do. You know it's terrible stakes, and the fact that he might almost lose his son.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Talk about
a crazy sequence.
Moment. It's a great moment.
Yeah. No. How about you?
So that was definitely one I was going to say for a surprise moment. I didn't expect it at all. I mean, when he's basically blown up in front of your eyes, and then there's just limbs missing, and
it's pretty savage.
Completely great, really savage, completely crazy. I think for other standout moments for me, particularly probably when Paul is walking alone when he separates off from the group.
Yeah.
This is towards the end of the film, and he has his connecting moment with Chadwick Boseman's character. So when they meet up, don't they? He kind of comes to him in person, and he has the memory of what actually happened, and it's revealed that he's the reason why he's dead because he accidentally shoots him, and then he forgives him, and they embrace and hug, and it's almost like he comes to terms with it entirely, and then
Yeah.
he's ready. He kind of is ready to die, I think.
Yeah.
So when he's caught, he knows he can't get out of it,
Yeah.
and he knows he's going to go, but he goes kind of singing, and
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, this is what I mean about him kind of delivering. In terms of his performance, he's always delivering, firing on all cylinders. He's fantastic. It's so good. It's just a total force. And then the rest of the film is brutal. I love. I mean, is Jean Reno is the Frenchman, right? That.
Yeah, I was like, mate, I ain't seen Jean Reno like absolutely ages. I was like, what was the last thing he's been in? You know.
So he was a surprise for me showing up, but
he's got a fat as well.
I know, but I actually really liked it because I thought, what a cool casting idea, because he can play an a-hole so well. So it was good.
That was good, and he was very good. I also particularly liked the bit where, like you say, that when they split off and he goes off on his own. Just before that, we have like the Vietnamese guys kind of stumble upon them with the gold, and there's the shoot off, and then it leads off to the kind of the big battle at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But both of those kind of sequences were great as well, just brilliant kind of action sequence, I guess.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and that's what I mean. And what's impressive about it as a film is that it can be all of those things. It can be an all-out war film, but it has those comedic moments. It's got great conversations between all of the lead characters, and then it also is a strange kind of, we're gonna find this old gold,
get rich
left here film as well. It's got a bit of mashing all these genres together while giving you a bit of Black history kind of mixed all into it, and it's done in such a seamless way that nothing ever really feels forced. And I guess that's why I'm giving it such high accolade here. Really, it does what I think little other films really do very well. It keeps you fully engaged for all of that time that you're watching it, and you're not. I personally wasn't watching my clock or anything, saying when is this going to end. I'm fully invested and loving it. I mean, I am marking it down because I think it maybe could have trimmed a little bit of fat and made it slightly shorter, but even then, I don't know where you would trim it.
Yeah,
honestly.
To be fair, like I've been sitting there thinking, you know what, I could watch that film again right now. If someone said, "Do you want to watch that film?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm in." And I probably would up it to a 5. I've just got that feeling. So maybe one day it'll change to a 5. But it is really enjoyable. I think the start is also quite powerful because you have a lot of sort of footage cut together, kind of these historical figures, giving quotes, and these people who have died, both Vietnamese people as well as Black people. And also the other thing that I kind of was pondering on when I've been thinking about this film, and that's always a good sign when you kind of want to think about what's Spike Lee trying to say. Ultimately, they're going for Norm's body, they're also going for the gold, aren't they? And there's an element that actually, you know, obviously gold changes people's hearts. That kind of idea of, you know, friendship kind of almost goes out the window because money can kind of make you go mad, and that's kind of in there. But the thing that was interesting to me was obviously they think it's theirs, and they're going to get it back, and ultimately they don't because other people think it's theirs as well. You know, I deserve some of this, and there's an element of it's Spike Lee saying the people who probably deserve something, you know, with like knowing that actually there was a massively higher proportion of Black soldiers in the fighting for the US in that war compared to the population back home, and also some of the obviously local Vietnamese soldiers dying purely because they've got to fight this war. and everyone feeling like actually we deserve something. This wasn't fair,
Yeah.
and ultimately, who gets that money? People don't get the fair share, and maybe that's what Spike's trying to sort of allude to. Actually, there isn't much justice going on, is there? And yeah, I think, and the fact that money does affect people, and the rich probably don't want to deal fairly in this world. So we're getting a bit deep there. I don't know. That certainly made me think of those points. But
yeah, I think you may be right. Obviously, like you say, they talk often in the film about the gold changing them, and they don't necessarily want it to change them. And then some of the other characters are thinking, well, this money is deserved to me, and then they constantly call back to Norm and say, well, what did
he say? Yeah,
be the right thing to do with this money? And ultimately, it doesn't become about the characters because most of the characters do not survive the end of the film, and the ones that do it, all the money basically filters down to the important people, right? The people that matter. It carries on these causes. It goes to all good causes. And I think what's interesting is that I can't remember which character it is that says it, but one of the characters says, you can't kill us, or whatever, we multiply. I think that's what it does. And effectively what happens with the gold is exactly that. It multiplies, doesn't it? It goes from being with those 5 people to eventually going out to a much wider group of people, to all these different causes like Black Lives Matter causes, and helping with the landmines being taken up in Vietnam and all sorts of things. And I guess it is a great heartwarming message, but also it doesn't pull its punches, in a sense that I think when you get to the end, you're seeing the wider picture. I guess that it's so much more than just this money for selfish gains. It's being used in the right way, and that's it's bigger than all of that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to highlight?
No,
there is a lot in there. We probably could dig deeper, but
there's probably so much we could talk about, and it could go on for a long time. I think it's just like, I'm going to echo basically what I said before, that there are a few films I think that I have seen where I would say they're culturally important, or they have an impact. They show, as a human race, I think, where we have come from and where we are going to, and that we are destined ultimately to repeat our own mistakes if we don't learn from them. This is always said, and I think this is the kind of film that I think it does have cultural importance. Yes, it is fun, and it is still ultimately a story, but it's a story where they've used it as a platform to talk about things that are still, at this current age, this current time, still very important points, and they should be mentioned, should be talked about. So it's good. It's great.
Definitely. Sure. It's a massive recommendation from us to watch this film. I will also recently watch for the first time Do the Right Thing, which a couple of weeks ago, which absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen that, like I hadn't until recently, do go and watch that as well. It is absolutely flipping brilliant. Talk about a film that doesn't hold back. I mean, that one really doesn't, and it's just a masterful experience to watch. And I for one, at the moment, I'm just wanting to search out what Spike Lee's done. I've seen some of his stuff, but not anywhere near most of it. So I'm going to go on that fun journey to watch some of his stuff. So yeah, and if you haven't seen Black Klansman as well, that's definitely worth seeing. It's brilliant.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we're done today. Remind us what your star rating, Brendan, was for Da 5 Bloods.
I'll be happy to. My star rating was 4.5 stars.
As was mine, 4.5. Very close, and I think it probably will be a 5 at some point when I watch it again.
Yeah,
Because it won't be an if I watch it again; it'll be when. Because I really loved it,
absolutely.
and I kind of just one of the things I think those characters are so rich. I just want to spend more time with them. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So massive respect for Spike Lee making this film, and it's so well timed to come out at this moment. So, Brendan, it's been a pleasure.
Sam, it's been wonderful.
It's always a joy, and never a chore. So it's a goodbye from us here, and we'll be back soon with more frank discussions about another film.
Yeah.
Well, bye-bye, Brendan. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.